All right, thank you everybody for joining today's webinar, Governing Content in Microsoft Teams. We appreciate you joining us today. And the first thing I want to do is just take a second to introduce our speakers. My name is Shana Horka and I work in product marketing here at Gimmal. And I'm joined by our key speaker today, product manager Will Irwin. Now, before we get started, I have a couple of housekeeping items to go through. If you have any questions throughout the webinar, feel free to submit them in the Q&A section on the bottom of your screen, and we're going to answer as many as we have time for at the end of the presentation. There will be at least one poll question pop up that you'll see, so please keep an eye out for that. All answers are anonymous. And as always, if you have any technical difficulties, please let us know so we can assist you. All right, so I have just a couple of slides here to tell you a little bit about Gimmal, and then I'll hand it over to Will so he can get started. Gimmal is a records information management and governance software company that was founded in 2002. Our goal is to help you achieve your information governance goals by providing solutions that help balance the value your information provides with the risk it also presents. Whether you're trying to discover information in unstructured data sources, migrate from legacy systems, or comply with policies across multiple repositories, Gimmal can help you achieve your information governance goals. We have a client success team and global network of partners that deliver solutions in conjunction with key partners like Microsoft and SAP. And Will, if you want to actually go to the next slide. Thanks. Gimmal's family of software products work together to let you create an efficient digital workplace. Our solutions include migration, file analysis, electronic and physical records management, document management for SAP. And for those of you who are familiar with our products, you might notice just a slight name change. They are the same products, but with a shortened, more convenient name for reference. But without further ado, I will hand it over to Will so he can go ahead and get started with today's presentation.
Yeah, thanks, Shana. Can you hear me?
Yep, sounds good.
All right, great. Hey, everybody. My name is Will Irwin. I'm a product manager at Gimmal, based out of Houston, Texas, and we'll be discussing governing content in Microsoft Teams. We'll talk about the common challenges associated with Teams information management, and we'll learn how to properly store and tag Teams content using Gimmal's new product called Drop Zones for Teams. So what started out in my mind whenever I first heard about Teams, I thought of it as basically a Skype for Business replacement. And I know that's a gross oversimplification, and boy was I wrong, because now it's not only the central hub for business communications, but also for content creation, project team collaboration. I absolutely love Teams, and we at Gimmal use it all the time. Teams has been extremely useful in connecting us all together, especially during the COVID era, but there are a few challenges to be aware of when creating and storing content using Teams. And that's where our Drop Zones for Teams product comes in to help alleviate some of those information governance challenges. And really just kind of set the stage a little bit. I assume most of you on the call know that Microsoft Teams is tied directly to Microsoft SharePoint. So each team has a SharePoint site that it's connected to in the background. So when Teams users create or upload documents in Teams, the file is actually being stored in SharePoint. And I love SharePoint too. I think it's a fantastic enterprise content management platform that provides organizations with the ability to really create a robust content type taxonomy to help guide their organization's information governance policies. And having a well-defined content type taxonomy in SharePoint allows content creators to tag their documents and files with the appropriate metadata. And this metadata is key. Really helps make it easier to sort and filter, find the content that you're looking for. Helps facilitate record retention policies to stay in compliance, assists with reporting, all kinds of stuff. However, enforcing these information governance policies like tagging content with appropriate metadata values, it can be challenging, especially if it's up to the end user's discretion. Which brings us to focus on an information governance challenge when it comes to content creation via Teams, and that's custom metadata assignment and upload location issues. Unfortunately, at the moment, I don't think the SharePoint content type taxonomy has really been fully realized within Teams. Currently, Teams users can't tag metadata to content during the upload process using Teams. So Teams out of the box, it allows you to drag and drop content onto a library or folder, but really that's it. No ability for the user to apply any kind of custom metadata elements. It can also be a little challenging for content creators to find exactly what area to drag and drop their files onto, since document libraries can sometimes be hidden away inside of a maze of Teams channels. And really that's where our Gimmal drop zones come into play. So the primary use case for Gimmal drop zones for Teams is really assisting end users in uploading net new content using Teams tied to SharePoint Online. Drop zones provides users with large square tiles directly within the Teams application, as you see here on the right. These drop zone tiles are configured with metadata properties that align with the organization's custom SharePoint taxonomy. Administrators can configure these drop zones to default certain metadata values. They can make some metadata properties required. You can hide specific fields, or you can even ask the end user who is uploading that content to manually enter certain metadata values. Drop zones are also configured with a destination location, so that each drop zone is mapped to a specific location within SharePoint Online for the uploaded content to reside. So knowing now a little bit more about drop zones, let's take a look at how it functions in our first of 3 use cases. Use case number 1, content governance in SharePoint Online. We can use drop zones for teams to upload and appropriately tag content to reside in SharePoint Online. Obviously, this is the most basic general use case. If you use SharePoint Online and or Teams, then Gimmal can make uploading and tagging that content a bit easier. So let's take a look at it. So drop zones for Teams users will interact with their drop zones through an app located on the left-hand current navigation panel in Teams. You can see it down there on the left-hand side. When users click on the drop zones app icon, and then their favorites tab here appears, showing the user's favorite drop zones. And all of the drop zone admin configurations, such as the title, the image, description, if it was favorited or not, any of the metadata properties and destination location that it's mapped to, all of that's done within the Gimmal cloud and then pushed down to the Teams application here. And all of this, it makes it a bit easier for content creators to know where to upload their files as well. I mean, we provide a big square drop zone tile configurable with custom images so that users don't have to hunt to figure out where to drop off their files. So let's say I work in HR and I've got a new policy or procedure to upload. I can click and hold my mouse on a single document, or I can select multiple files at once and I can click and drag those documents over on top of my desired drop zone. And you can drag and drop files from multiple locations, such as File Explorer, if you got some files in your File Explorer, or on your personal computer's desktop. You can move things from OneDrive and even from Outlook. So if you've got an email with maybe some attachments that you'd like to upload via drop zone, then you can drag and drop that content directly from Outlook to drop zones for Teams. When the drag and drop action, when it's performed correctly, you'll see the drop zone image change to an upload cloud, like you see it here. You can then release your mouse click to successfully start the upload process. So I can see here a pop-up message will then display informing the user that the initial upload succeeded or failed. So you can see that it succeeded successfully. Like, I don't know if you can fail successfully, but we have succeeded here. Click next and you'll be presented with the metadata assignment page. So I can go down there and click the purple next button and I'll be presented with the metadata assignment page. So this is presented directly to the user when uploading content. This is a big one, especially because Teams out of the box, it never asks you for metadata, meaning users aren't able to tag and upload content with the appropriate metadata directly within Teams unless you use one of these drop zones. So we can confirm that, yeah, we're in the policies and procedures drop zone where we've added our 2 test docs. And you can see those 2 test docs, 1 and 2, there on the left-hand side. You'll notice that what we were calling the sticky properties tab is highlighted first with custom metadata properties presented on the right. So these sticky property values will basically get applied to all the files that you drag and drop during this process. So we only need to set the metadata values once at this level, and they'll get set for both of the test docs that I just uploaded. You'll also notice that the policy type property here has been defaulted to the corporate value. Drop zone admins can default these metadata property values where possible, like I did here for the corporate value, to kind of help alleviate some of the manual tagging efforts from the end user. I can then look at the next metadata property here being owning organization. I believe I set this up as a choice column, so I can click the drop down arrow here and select the appropriate value from the list of values. So I'll select human resources. I also have a couple date time fields, one called policy effective date. I can click on the calendar icon to set the day, month, year, and time if applicable. So with all the sticky properties filled in, I can click on my first test doc 1 from the left-hand side to fill out metadata that's specific to that file. So here I filled in my metadata values for title and for policy number that only pertain to test doc 1. If I wanted to come in here and reconfigure my drop zone to maybe include the policy number as a sticky property, you know, maybe anytime I'm interacting with this drop zone, anything I'm dragging in here is always going to have the same policy number. So I just want to be able to set that once. I can certainly configure it to do so. These drop zones are pretty flexible to really fit any approach. I can fill in the metadata here for test doc 2 as well. And then I can go down and click on the details tab there at the bottom. So the details tab displays the drop zone and metadata template details being used for the current drop zone, that being policies and procedures. A user can double check these details before actually submitting their release to make sure that the files are going to get set to the right SharePoint Online location. Once I click submit, I can view the releases tab, which provides release details for the files that I've uploaded. So here's the releases tab. Everything I see here was uploaded at some point by me. Drop zone admins, if you're at the admin level, you can view all releases from all the users, but normal drop zone users only get to see their releases, things that they've drag and dropped. Each row here indicates a drag and drop action that was performed for the corresponding drop zone. I can view its status, how many files I dragged and dropped during that process, when it was submitted, created, and modified. I can then go over to the far right-hand side and click the ellipse next to one of these release items to actually view specific release details. So I can look at the release details here. It provides most of the same status, file count, and date information here. I can also click the Files tab at the top to then view each document that was uploaded during that time, and I'm able to view it. I'm able to see what metadata was applied. So you can see down here, there's my policy with my policy number that I put in for test doc 1. So once the files are, once the uploaded files have been processed, they're processed successfully, uploaded successfully, I can check in Teams or I can check in SharePoint Online to see the files in their proper location. I can see my 2 test docs have made it to the policies and procedures document library, and they now have the appropriate metadata values, and that image there at the bottom is just kind of expanding on that metadata so that you can see that all of it has been successfully applied. And that's it for our first use case. Now these next 2 use cases I think are pretty important. I think they really help build the Gimmal story because we're really kind of combining 2 Gimmal products to solve a business problem. So use case number 2, we're still uploading content to SharePoint Online, but now it's for records management. It's for a records management purpose. Dropzones makes it a little easier, better to upload and tag that content for classification and retention into Gimmal records. So let's take a look. So let's say I still work in HR and human resources. I've got a new employee file to upload. Again, I can drag and drop my files over on top of my desired drop zone. I can see my drop zone image change to an upload cloud, and then I can release my mouse click to successfully start that upload process. I see all of my files succeeded, and I can go ahead and click next. I'm presented again with the metadata assignment page, but this time you'll notice that I have some required fields, or a required field here. Required fields are indicated in red to alert the end user. These required fields must be populated with a value before being able to continue with the upload process. You can see indicated there by the grayed out submit button in the bottom left-hand corner. I can't click submit until I fill out the required metadata. So I'll now enter in my sticky properties. I've selected Bilbo Baggins as the employee and changed his employee status from the default one of active to on leave. He's on his way to destroy the One Ring, or maybe that was Frodo. Notice that the submit button there is now available to click once I've filled in the required metadata. So I've got the requirements filled in there. I can now click submit. But with all the sticky properties filled in, I can now move on to test doc 2 to see if there's any metadata specific to that file that I can also apply as well. So I can click on test doc 2. Here I filled in the title and selected the appropriate employee file type, but you'll notice the grayed out field above for content type. So we have the ability using Gimmal drop zones to set the SharePoint content type for a file. So here I've got it configured to default the content type value to employee file, and I've forced the value to be read-only so that users can't go in there and change it. If I want to make sure that the same content type is always applied to documents and the same drop zone, I can force that value to be applied. I can fill in the metadata for test doc 3 as well, and then I can select submit. Like before, I can view the release details if I want, or like I'm doing here, I can go ahead and navigate to the library in Teams or in SharePoint Online to see those files. And I can see my 2 test docs have made it to the employee files document library with the appropriate metadata values applied. And here we have our records management product, which is separate from drop zones. We can have what I'm really showing here is we can have our Gimmal records product pre-configured on the back end to look at that document library destination location, or to look at and evaluate the metadata property values that have been tagged to that uploaded content, to then be able to apply the appropriate classification and or retention policies that I've set up. So in this example, I have a classification rule configured in Gimmal records that looks at the employee file type column that I entered in via dropzone. And if it has the value of training, it'll get classified to the employee training materials record class. So this is pretty cool. It's a very important problem that we usually always encounter at clients. And that's the ability to know what you have so that you can classify it to your records retention schedule, and dropzones, I think, really helps you out with that. All right, for our final use case, again, we're still uploading content to SharePoint Online using dropzones for teams, but now that content, that uploaded content it's linked to a SAP business transaction. So this scenario uses dropzones as well as another Gimmal product called Gimmal Link. So let's take a look. So let's say I'm a user that has a purchase order to upload, but I don't have, I might not have access to SAP for various reasons, or maybe I want to store that document content elsewhere, right? So again, I can drag and drop my files over the drop zone. I then see the upload cloud image there, and I can release my mouse click to begin that upload process. I see that the purchase orders have succeeded, so I can go ahead and click next at the bottom. Again, I have some required fields on the metadata assignment page, so I'll go ahead and fill in that necessary information. I've entered in the SAP purchase order number as well as the PO approver. So in this example, the purchase order number in this case, it's special because this is really what's going to link that purchase order in SAP to the document content that we're uploading to reside in SharePoint. So with all the sticky properties filled in here, I'll now move on to PO1 to fill in metadata specific to that file. And really the only thing I need to fill out here in this example is just an optional title. I can also fill in metadata for the PO2 document as well, and I can go ahead and click submit. I can view the release details if I want, or I can go directly to the library in Teams or SharePoint Online to see the files. I see my 2 test docs have made it to the SAP purchase orders document library with the metadata applied. And now we can have our Gimmal Link product. So this is, again, pulling out of drop zones. We're looking at Gimmal Link. We have this configured in the background, kind of like we had records management configured in the background, to look at that document library and link the uploaded content back to its appropriate transaction in SAP. Really, this helps make that content available to users in both SharePoint Online and SAP, and also helps alleviate some of those key pain points that most SAP customers encounter, such as high cost of user licenses and storage space. I think that brings us to our one and only poll for today's webinar. I think you might see that coming across your screen pretty shortly. Poll question being, would you like a personal demo of Gimmal drop zones for Teams? You can hit yes or no for that. And I will now open it up. Let's see.
Yeah, and I'll go ahead and pop in so we can use our time wisely here in the last 4 minutes of the webinar. So I'm going to just start the Q&A, Will, if that's okay with you.
Yeah, sure.
Okay, so the first question we have is, after the success page and before submitting the metadata page, are the files already in SharePoint?
No, they have not made it to SharePoint yet during that time. It's still out there in the release. Once the user goes through and actually fills in the appropriate metadata values and clicks submit, that's when the upload process actually occurs.
Okay. And then are the sticky properties something users populate each time a document is dragged and dropped, or is the purpose to set these the first time documents are dragged to a drop zone? For example, when it's first used or activated.
Yeah, sure. I'll try and answer that question here. So really the sticky properties kind of help you apply, you can configure your drop zone with certain properties that you want to be quote unquote stickied, so that if you dragged and dropped in maybe 5 different files, that instead of going to each document, like you saw with my 2 test documents earlier, and applying that same property and that same value to each of those 5 documents, if I wanted to just do it one time and have it set for all 5, then you can configure that property as a sticky property. And really that's kind of what it helps you do.
Right, the next one is using the drop zones, how is security applied to only allow specific people to upload documents and or view documents once uploaded?
Sorry, Shane, I might have to ask you to
Repeat it. Yeah, I'm sorry. That was a little choppy of me. In using the drop zones, how is security applied to only allow specific people to upload documents and or view documents once uploaded?
That's on the SharePoint side. So if I'm understanding your question correctly, if the user doesn't have access to create content in the area that the drop zone is connected to, then they won't be able to. It'll come back as failed. It'll know that the user doesn't have access to that area, and it'll come back as failed, and it'll designate it as such. So yeah, if you're encountering users who are trying to drag and drop content into the drop zone, it's failing each time, it could be a security permission related to the document library in SharePoint itself.
And the next one is, how does drop zones work with OneDrive? Is a hierarchy possible instead of tiles so that the taxonomy can be created by the end user? And how do the drop zones get created? Is it by the user?
The drop zones get created by drop zone admin, so I can answer that one just because I know it off the top of my head here. So if you're a drop zone admin, you can go into what I didn't show you today, which is the web version of the Gimmal Cloud drop zones, which is where the admin actually goes out there. They'll create the drop zone, they'll put the title and the image if they want an image, or it can just use the stock SharePoint Online logo if you don't have an image to put up there. And they also go out there and actually configure all of the destination locations. So they'll point it to which library they want it to go to. They'll include which properties they want to be available to the user from the drop zone. So they'll configure all of that from the web. And then users can go out there and favorite the ones that are available to them and the ones that they use all the time. And so whenever they favorite those, that's what shows up and the drop zones for Teams application that I demoed for you today. So it's kind of a 2-step process. You've got really just 2 roles. You've got the drop zone admins who set and configure everything, and then the end users who just kind of favorite their drop zones, and they can work with them with the drag and drop functionality there. I'm sorry, Shane, I missed that first part.
So in terms with how they work with OneDrive, and then is a hierarchy possible instead of tiles, so the taxonomy can be created by the end user, which kind of answered that last one. So how does it work with OneDrive?
Maybe I'm not understanding that question 100%. Maybe I can, whoever asked that question, maybe I can reach out to you afterward and we can discuss that. I might need some clarification around it.
Okay, and then we'll do 2 more questions, just be respectful of time. Can this app be a Teams tab? For example, the SAP team has their own team and they could have a specific tab in that with drop zones, or is it just a personal app?
Unfortunately, not yet. Right now it is an app version only. I see that as a good idea. So we might actually be adding that in the future. And, and I'm glad someone brought it up, because that means that people are thinking about that and want that functionality. So yeah, currently it's just an app, but maybe in the future.
And the last one is, Are drop zones drag and drop only, or is there functionality for drop zone to extract existing documents from a Teams channel, chat, or file?
Again, that's another great question. I'm glad someone brought it up. That's in our queue to work on. It is not available as of yet. Right now, it's only drag and drop functionality. In the future, I definitely seeing that as a possibility, though.
Great. Well, we are a minute over, so I'm going to go ahead and start wrapping up the webinar. If anyone has any more questions, we do have a couple questions still left, so we'll reach out personally to you. If you have any more questions, both of our email addresses are right there up on the screen. Will, if you want to go to the next slide, or you can just always email us at info@gimmal.com. We will be sending out the recording of this webinar between 24 to 48 hours if anybody wants to view that. It's going to be in the form of a thank you email. So please keep an eye out for that if you want to see the recording. And then we also hope to see everybody at our webinar next week. The topic is Enhance Information Governance in Microsoft 365. But we hope you enjoy the rest of your day, and thank you for joining.